In 2018, my local movie theater hosted Studio Ghibli Fest. I've never seen a single one of Miyazaki's movies before, I didn't have a YouTube channel where I talked about anime, and I really didn't know much about them at all. But I knew that people considered them iconic. So every month a friend and I watched one of these, like Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and what came to be my favorite, Porco Rosso. But after watching just one of these films, I quickly realized why they were so beloved. My friend and I would talk for hours in the parking lot after each movie about the interesting story, and just how immersed we were in these mystical worlds, and this remained the case after watching his newest movie, The Boy and the Heron. And after watching that, it made me think, how can an animated movie filled with such bizarre and odd characters make me feel like I'm looking into a world that's existed far before I've seen it and will continue to exist far after the story's told? Yes, the animation and the art style, but the one thing that my friend and I missed while we watched was the soundtrack that tied it all together. I wanted to find out how this music fits so well into these fantastical worlds, so I decided to look up all the musical composers for these movies, and turns out these soundtracks are the product of one man, Joe Hisaishi. He is referred to as the Japanese John Williams, since much like John Williams composing Spielberg's work, he continues to score all of Miyazaki's work. He has won countless awards for his music, including the Japanese Academy Award for Best Music 8 times, and his music features in 4 of the top 11 all-time highest grossing films in Japan. He's the real deal, but what makes these soundtracks so unique? The music of Studio Ghibli is unlike other soundtracks we've gotten in big budget films. Let's use John Williams as an example, since he's always compared to Hisaishi, and probably John Williams' most recognizable score is Star Wars. The theme is huge, the horns are loud and booming, the layers of instruments make the theme so powerful. Instruments are constantly coming in and out as the main theme plays on. And similarly, in Jurassic Park, Williams builds upon strings after strings into a crescendo of catchy melodies and remains iconic to this day. A lot of composers do this, and we get great soundtracks, but Studio Ghibli doesn't really follow this school of thought. To show what I mean, let's take a look at John Williams' Hedwig's theme from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, a theme for a young child in a world filled with magic and fantasy, to Spirited Away's theme, another story about a young child in a magical fantasy world. John Williams' track is a 5-minute song filled with a melody that continues to build on itself with orchestral layers coming in and out and breaking into a huge crescendo of horns, winds, and strings. It's an amazing theme that is a staple of the Harry Potter films, and Hisaishi does this at times, but he takes his themes in a very different direction. The simple arpeggios of the piano create all of the magic that the listeners need to hear. As the song progresses, we do add in some strings that swell in, that fill out the sound, but the twinkling piano is doing all of the heavy lifting, and it's perfect. With just the piano, Hisaishi transports you into the spirit realm, whether you're sitting on the couch, driving in your car, or writing a YouTube video. And yes, Studio Ghibli's music also uses loud orchestral hits and layers of different instruments to convey different emotions. He has a range when composing, and his music can convey an epic scope, as it does throughout Princess Mononoke and Castle in the Sky. It can be playful, as in Howl's Moving Castle, A Walk in the Skies, and Porco Rosso's Flying Boatman. It can be romantic, like the Flower Garden from Howl's and the opening song from The Wind Rises. But the real magic comes from the piano. It's always present throughout the soundtrack and what ties all of the other orchestral moments together. The piano tone can be somber, full with reverb and sustain, and then lighthearted and happy with upbeat melodies. And what the soundtracks do very well is that they always make the situation serious, regardless of what's happening on screen. Instead of the over-the-top, silly, childlike soundtracks you may hear in other animated kids movies, these soundtracks keep things neutral. Viewers of all ages can stay immersed in these movies as the soundtrack never leans too far into the silly and makes a world of mythical creatures seem so real, because the messages of Studio Ghibli's movies are for everyone. A way Hisaishi does this is by adding space into his playing. Take a listen to the end of the theme of Grave of the Fireflies called Two People. There are so many different ways to convey a somber, melancholy mood, but Hisaishi only needs a few notes in the space between them. Even though he isn't playing anything, he is still very much painting the sad picture. The space in between allows for the notes that are being played to feel even more important. He uses this to create simple and yet incredibly powerful meaning to each note. What seems so simple from a player's perspective, you can realistically learn this as a beginner piano player, but with that wall of sound mixed with the emotion he creates in just a few notes, gives Studio Ghibli that sonic brand. Much like how a few simple notes created the mystery of the heron in The Boy and the Heron. And sometimes he plays nothing. Even this conveys emotion and importance in the movies. Instead of playing, Hisaishi tells the viewers to just listen to the world around you. He employs sound effects to create a more believable world. These sound effects are very normal. They aren't random noises to make it sound otherworldly. I hear wind blowing, birds chirping, rocks crumbling. Rather than just listening to the music and relying on it to carry a scene, this allows for viewers to become immersed in the world and think about the questions Miyazaki poses. Even in The Boy and the Heron, I found myself just constantly wondering what was going on.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy then? What do the ships mean? Why are there so many birds?
And as the credits rolled, I began thinking about the real message of the film. Studio Ghibli mixes simplicity with emotion that helps you believe in the world Miyazaki creates. Even when you're not watching the movies, just listening to the soundtrack still conveys the powerful messages, and I learned that by reacting to the Boy and the Heron soundtrack. And to see how that turned out, you can check out this video right here.